3.3 seconds. Here's Haliburton, puts it up.
Yes!
He hits it in.
Money!
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. Pacers win in Los Angeles last night, 133-116 over the LA Clippers. Would you look at that? Second night of a back-to-back. It was a fun weekend of basketball, Pacers fans. March Madness at the Fieldhouse. Pacers are 3-1 on the road trip. Pascal Siakam hitting his stride. Jarris Walker showing flashes. And as Tyrese Haliburton finally broken out of the slump. We're breaking it all down here. You are listening to the Pacers Post Up. All right, Pacers fans, we are back here for yet another episode of the Pacers Post Up. Coming to you on we're recording this on a Tuesday, right after the finish of the West Coast swing, let's call it, the final back-to-back of the year. We finish at 3-10 on back-to-backs, which is not exactly a stellar record, but I guess it's a good way to go out. It was a fun game in L.A., Obviously 2 in L.A. in a row, Lakers, Clippers, but you know, last episode, we kind of left off with Tyrese Haliburton. And just to recap that real briefly, obviously, it's no secret, Haliburton was slumping and had been slumping, probably the worst stretch of his career. Not probably, definitely the worst stretch of his career. But we got to kind of pick it up because so much has happened, and that's the nature of the NBA, is that, you know, Carlisle says it all the time. There's a game the next night or two nights down the road. And so, you know, we go to Detroit, get the win. Obviously, a kind of a big game at Golden State. We're the only team to not lose in the Chase Center, the Warriors' new arena. So that was good. We'll talk about Lakers. We'll talk about Clippers. Ryan, I know before we dive in here, you wanted a little note on March Madness, as that has been kind of unfolding here over the last week or so. To kind of kick off the tournament.
Yeah, I was fortunate just with my job this week. I was pretty much able to watch all of the games this weekend, all 32 in the first round, and even then the next 16, and really had a phenomenal time. But I wanted to bring something up just because when I went to school in Dayton a lot, people would come up to me because they know I'm a huge basketball fan.
Yeah.
But I didn't care about Flyers college basketball, really. It just never clicked with me. And they'd always give me things like, why don't you like it? And I don't get it. And I watched this weekend, and I just couldn't be taken away on a few things. We're not going to spend much time on this, but just from a production value, I mean, they had all these NBA guys in there, Chuck's on there, Ernie. These guys can't be watching college basketball at all. I mean, not even a little bit. I don't know how Chuck watches anything these days.
Yeah.
They're just basically entertainers. Then the referees in this games, the officiating, I had like 8 calls, and I'm into these games because I've got a lot of money going on, and that's really how I get invested, where they'll make the call, they put their fist up, and I watch them for 15 seconds, and they don't make a call.
Yeah, they don't make the call.
And I'm like, what's going on? And maybe they're saying something in the arena so the communication's there, but as a fan, I'm sitting there going, what's the call? What's happening? Yeah. And so the officiating, and then just the games themselves. We had a race to 10 on one of the games we were watching, and it didn't hit until the 9-minute mark.
Oh, my God.
11 minutes. It was FAU and Northwestern. And again, all these, a lot of these college friends would be like, I just can't watch the NBA because, there's too many threes or the defense. And I don't know how somebody can watch college basketball and then turn around. The defense, I mean, half of it's 2-3 zones, and the offense is just passing it around the zone for 15 seconds, and then all they do is just pull up from 3 anyway.
No question about it. So it's so funny. I had no idea where you were going to go with this. None. I knew you wanted to talk about March Madness coming into the episode. Nikki's my fiance, we're sitting there on, I want to say Friday. She works remote. I was working from the office on Friday, and we had some of the games on in the background, and she was like, oh my God, they are terrible. And I was like, babe, this is why we don't watch college basketball, because it's hard for me to watch. Yeah. And we were texting on our family thread because we have a family bracket that one of our brothers kind of runs for us. And I said before the tournament kicked off, I have literally watched 0 games in their entirety this season. And of course my bracket went to shit. But the point being, I just can't get behind the product. I know that for many years it was about the tradition and the school and representing. That is all gone for the most part. I mean, I pay attention enough to understand NIL and the transfer portal and how all this stuff works, but the sport has changed so much, and frankly, it's more about the players capitalizing and getting their path to the league or their path to the money while they can make it. And I just feel like, don't get me wrong, I loved watching, I'm going to forget the guy's name, the guy for Oakland go off against UK, 10 3-pointers. He only had 8 2-point attempts on the year. I mean, there's just, you get these unreal things. And March Madness is awesome.
Well, there's nothing like it. And if you're a fan of it, I'm not saying that you're wrong, because there is something about being with your school, cheering them on, these upsets. I mean, all my Dayton friends were going nuts. It was a 24-4 run to win their first round game. And I get it. But if you're one of those people who's arguing, I can't watch the NBA, but I love college, that's fine. We just can't talk basketball because we're so far apart on that. And it's funny, we can almost segue out of this just because on Friday night, when we finally got the Warriors game on at 10, it was all me and my friends that were watching, stood back and took a breath. It's like, the officiating's right. The broadcast is back to being normal. I know what's going on. And so it was nice to watch some NBA too. And, for anybody whose bedtime was unfortunately past or before 10 o'clock this weekend, it was a really fun Pacers weekend.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think the perfect segue, frankly, this is something that I wanted to touch on, and we'll just do it now before we dive in. Tyrese Haliburton had comments, and I don't remember if they were after the Warriors game or after the Lakers game, but a lot of the lovers of college basketball will say NBA, no defense, blah blah blah. That's the narrative that they always cite. And Tyrese had a little anecdote here. It's something you brought up, talking about how a lot of the unders have been hitting on NBA lines. The players are noticing different officiating and letting people be more physical, not letting some of these games get out of control. Now, I say that in the context of we had a 150 to 145 game,
we'll get to that.
But we will get to that. So I think you're going to see, and the tide has already started to turn. I think if you're an NBA hater or somebody, if you're listening to this, you're probably not. But if you're a college basketball fan and you say, you know what, they don't play any defense, well, that's just not true.
No.
And some of the officiating is allowed for more points and this, that, and the other. But I think Adam Silver, particularly after the All-Star game and some of the lackluster performance, lack of competitiveness, we're going to see some of that change. So that's something to keep an eye on long term. But starting with Tyrese, we got to pick up where we left off, because we said it on the last episode, this was going to be a critical stretch for Tyrese. And, we weren't prescribing anything, Ryan, but we did touch on it. I'm curious your thoughts on what you saw at the Detroit game, because everybody was saying, he got out of the slump at Golden State, but I kind of disagree.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you saw in Detroit kind of kicking off the road trip.
He definitely came into that Detroit game with a different mindset. Obviously, we were talking about more of just our short-term concern with Tyrese, just how cold he was. It was hard not to be. But it was clear he had a huge emphasis to attack the rim.
Yeah.
I think he was 8 of 10 within the paint. He only shot 3 threes that game, which was the lowest in really this whole stretch of March he had. And he was still getting everybody involved, but that was a huge turn where he was not looking for that step back every time. He was attacking, and, Detroit's got some weaker perimeter defenders, so he's able to take advantage of that and really, I think, found a rhythm.
Yeah, I that's exactly, I felt the same way. It's what I saw on the floor. I didn't know he was 8 of 10, but that passes the eye test, so to speak, because it was clear that he was not going to settle.
Yeah,
and
that's a great word.
I think that's what he had been doing, and I understand why he was settling, because you said it, he's been a 40% three-point shooter his entire career. So it's like, in his mind, he's not really settling. This is a high percentage shot for him, but he just hadn't been hitting it. So he needed to do something different. My argument on the last episode was maybe we make a lineup change. Obviously, that didn't come to pass, but something had to give. Yeah. Something had to change, and it was clear that he was going to attack. And we got out in that game, and it was really a great game across the board. A lot of people had strong efforts. I thought Tyrese and Pascal started to click a little bit more, and that's a trend that,
as you say, built through the weekend for sure.
That definitely built through the weekend. And again, the beauty of our roster is we've gotten production from a lot of different guys. So Isaiah Jackson in Detroit. And he's a Detroit kid. He gets a double-double that night, was extremely impactful when I thought Myles was okay, but Isaiah was a clear, was the first guy Carlisle mentioned at the podium.
So, he came in with just a ton of energy, and that's really his MO game, where he's just coming in and he's always jawing with everybody. He's in it. He's skinny, but he's physical in there with his players. He can block shots. He's probably our best pick and roll lob threat. Obi's our best lob threat, but in terms of pick and roll and being able to run that action with a verticality threat, he's always a threat. And he's finished really well around the rim this year, which has been a nice improvement. And so, Ijax, maybe even down the line, there's going to be a conversation of Ijax and Jalen, and I still probably lean Jalen a little bit only because of the shooting. But with his health too, there's always an argument.
Yeah, and what was interesting too. So if you just look at the Detroit game as a whole, I was listening to the broadcast on radio before the game, and it was Pat Boylan and Mark Boyle, obviously, and Pat asked Mark. He said, "Do you expect the Pacers to win this game?" And Mark said, "No." He goes, "Do I think they should win this game?" Yeah. Yes, but they've shown an ability or an aptitude or a tendency, probably the best word, to lose these types of games. And I think it can't go overstated how important a win that was, given where we were at, the context of coming off that Cleveland loss, the 1 of 9 shooting with Tyrese, at that point he was at 16.9% shooting, and the word you used on the last episode was dejected, and I thought that was as low as we felt energy-wise. So it was a huge win. I don't want to dissect Detroit anymore because it's a game you should have won, and we did. And then we kind of get on the road and go out to Golden State, and I frankly thought, this and the Clippers were two of our best performances of the year. Yeah. So what did you see on what was it, Friday? I can't even keep it straight. Thursday night, Friday night in
This
Golden
was Friday.
State? Friday night in Golden State.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. What were your thoughts on that?
So Friday was another one of those really well-balanced games, too, for our teams. I think we had 8 guys. Everyone likes to say 10+. We had 8 guys with 8+ in that game. Okay. So it was really everybody who was playing got nice minutes. Yeah. Siakam, this is really where Siakam started to take off this weekend. Yeah. I don't know every stat. I wrote down here, he had 16 boards in this game, which we know Myles Turner's weakness is a lot of that, and he has helped cover that up a lot. I was looking just at some rebounding stats post All-Star break and really when he got in there. And we're middle of the league, which is fine for what we roll out.
Yeah, it was one of those games where my critique this whole time has been, with regard to Siakam, is this fit. And it was so much of what we talked about on the front side. Is it going to work? And I just hadn't felt like him and Tyrese were clicking. And these last 3 games in particular, even with the loss in LA, I felt like they've started to get on the same page.
100%.
And I felt like Tyrese did a great job against Golden State of picking his spots, introducing a little bit more of the 3 ball. He really looks much better planning off the left and going to the right and getting that, wing 3 in the right hand, right side wing. He just looks strong getting to that spot and very comfortable. And he hits it. They took one of his threes off the board, I think. I don't know if you saw that.
4 of 7 that day or 4 of 8?
Yeah, he was like 4 of 8, something like that. But they took one. He should have been 5 of 9. I think one of them was a foot on the line or something like that. But he hits the 2 buzzer beaters at the end of the half and the end of the third, which I thought was really encouraging. But the part that, and I don't want to lose my train of thought here, the part that I thought was most encouraging to me from that game with Tyrese and Siakam in particular was our transition game. Yeah. We were getting out in transition a ton. We turned them over. We were blocking shots, not only with Turner, which I know we want to touch on, but Tyrese had 2 blocks on Steph Curry that I thought were...
that led to fast breaks too.
Critical, critical. We got out, and I want to say... I had the stat written down. It was 26 or 28 points in transition that game. Okay. It was the most fast break points we had in a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I really felt like that helped us stems some of the, the Warriors get hot. Clay came in that second quarter and was like instant scorer. So it was just encouraging to see us get back out with a little pace because I have so much of my critique has been the ball sticking with whether it's Nembhard or Siakam, but our defense really led to some easy buckets.
I was going to say, I'm glad you say, because that's where it all really came from, was that defensive end, which allowed us to push. I was watching a lot of like those 10-minute highlight videos before we did this today, just kind of getting my mind back in each game. Yeah. And there were 3 or 4 fast breaks where Nembhard individually got the steal and was out on the run. And it was always in these like, okay, we just took the 10-point lead or the 12, like end of run, calling timeouts where he's stripping Steph or even Harden, who he played great D on both those guys throughout the weekend. And so, it was really good to see that. And Siakam, we know, is good in transition, so it was good to see that emphasized a lot. We saw a lot of nice really poster dunks this weekend too, which we can talk about if we want. There's a funny clip with him and Obi talking about it after last night's win. But it was, I think you hit it right where the defense was clear, and I think we held Golden State to like 111 or something, 113, somewhere in that range. And it's been nice to see that happen, and everybody was clicking, and we got moving. And I'm with you with the synergy. I think both Tyrese and Siakam, and this is what we touched on a lot early, is just it takes time with these guys. They've never played together like this, and I think they're both getting better at picking their spots. When do we go to that mid-post range game? When it's slowed down, then you hit Siakam in there. But then we saw a little bit more action where Tyrese was getting screens with Siakam, which we've talked about we want to see because you might as well get your 2 best players in the pick and roll. And so I think they're starting to figure it out, and it helps that Tyrese's shot was falling.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's one of those things that we said on the front side where the Warriors have been a little like us. They look really good. They look really bad. I actually, I thought it was going to be a closer game down the stretch than it was. Yeah. Clay didn't shoot well in the second half, and our defense stepped up. And we've been, I pulled some stats. I'll just share them. I mean, we're 18th in defense since the All-Star break, and we're like tenths of a point out of 14th, 13th. I mean, we're at 113.8, and I think you're talking about there's like 3 or 4 teams that have a 113 in front of it. It's just a 0.1 or 2 or 3.
And we talked about this. We were, and this has been a trend for the last 3 years, in that like 26th range. And we're not going to be, especially with Tyrese, going to be one of these, Bostons who can just lock you down everywhere. If we can get it up to that middle tier, which we've kind of done, we can see some of that success.
Yeah, and it's good to see because it's been an emphasis, and I think we've kind of changed a little bit. Now we're still second in pace since the All-Star break. Washington's the only team outpacing us right now. So I looked at that today and I was like, that is interesting. And we're 3rd in offense, and we're 7th in net rating. So we're now, the tough part is Orlando is like 4th in net rating. They have played so well since the break, and so that's obviously a team that's chief right in the standings with us. But I do think that was the key on Friday night at Golden State was our ability to frankly defend and led to some scoring. We got to touch on real quick. That was the night that Myles broke the all-time franchise blocks record. He gets a block on I believe it was Kuminga going for a dunk. He had 5 blocks that night. Yeah. We had 10 as a team. So it was a literal, kind of a block party for him. And I know you want to touch a little bit on Myles just because he's had such a tumultuous road here.
Great word.
The fan base has been so reluctant to wrap their arms around this guy, and I've never understood it. I get it. I mean, listen. Sabonis just broke the double-double record, and he's been phenomenal. He's leading the league in triple-doubles, all that. But I want to get your thoughts on Myles and just bigger picture where you see him at in his 9th year in this franchise and breaking a really, tough record with the blocks.
Yeah, it's awesome to see him get a record like that. I don't think anybody's surprised at this point with 9 seasons. If you've watched Myles Turner, his staple in his career, you can argue a lot of different things, which he has been that polarizing player. He has always been an effective rim protector pretty much since entering the league. if you look at any advanced stats or effective field goal percentage at the rim or just defended shots, he is always up there with the best in the league, the Rudies, the Embiids. He's right there. If not, I'm pretty sure he's led it a couple years.
His rookie year, that signature block on LeBron, that was Quinn's smothered chicken double time or whatever it was. But it's been a staple for him.
And, one thing, and we've talked about this with Myles just throughout his whole career, how miscast he's been at times. He comes into the league and has clearly got this nice shot, mid-range game. We spend the whole offseason trying to put him in the post. Then we get Domas in here. He's basically a 4, kind of, where he doesn't even really have a role on the offense. And he said that once in one post-game interview and then went on, I think it was the Woj podcast too, and was really frustrated. He's like, I'm not even closing games sometimes. I don't know what I'm just standing in the corner. And he used that, I'm just a role guy, and I think I can contribute more. And a lot of fans say, Myles, you can't do this. We've heard all the arguments.
People wanted to run him out of town.
Yeah, and how many of those people, if I would have stood here right now and looked at him and said, hey, he's going to be part of, either one of the best or the best pick and roll duo in the league, how many of those fans would have been like, oh, you're an idiot?
Right. Well, and so much of whatever it is in life, basketball, you name it, it's about opportunity, fit, getting the right team together, getting the chemistry right. And those are things that, frankly, just didn't click for Myles. You think about the different coaches that he's had, the different players that he was around for PG.
Yeah.
So it's so much has changed. And I think I give him a lot of credit because we saw this, you just mentioned it, early in his career. The guy is a great shooter. He works that mid-range game really well. He finally has a player in Tyrese that understands him. Pascal had talked about wanting to come play with the stretch 5, and you're seeing a lot of this pay off. He had another really big night. I mean, just right out of halftime last night, scored 8 points just like that. And 2 threes. I mean, we'll get to that. I don't want to, totally jump the gun there, but I was happy to see Myles get the record. You could tell it meant something to him to kind of be able to leave his imprint on this organization, and that's going to be one that stands for a long time, I think, because you just don't get a lot of guys that are...
No, you're going to have a guy play 10 years averaging 2.5 blocks, basically a game.
And you said, we talked before, you said he's basically been in the top 5 in the league in blocks his entire career.
Yeah, I mean, every year it's a staple. Like I said, he's so good at a lot of things that I think always get overlooked. And pick and roll is the most run action. I'm talking defensively here. Obviously, we talked about the offense a second ago.
Yeah.
He is great at drop coverage, hedging. He can switch. He just can kind of do it all. He can fade. He can protect the rim. Obviously, he has his weak points. Yeah.
He's a little soft.
Yeah.
But you don't get all of that.
No.
I mean, would you rather have some burly guy down there that can, Andre Drummond or Zubac
who gets run off the floor the last 2 games, basically, against Myles?
It's one of those things where I just think people have tried to square peg, round hole him for his entire career, and it's like, enjoy what you have.
Yeah, and he really suffered, I think, for those 4 years where he was running when it was Brogdon and Sabonis. I swear to you, Brogdon didn't look at him. I know you think...
Brogdon didn't look at anybody.
That's true.
He just pounded.
It was him and Domas just hammering. And it's like you said, it's even worked out better for Domas because they built a team where he's the center point of the offense, where he's got shooters all around him, and it works better for him. And I'm just glad looking back, and I said this to you before, Myles Turner was in trade rumors for, 6 of his 9 years,
100%.
basically. And the truth is, if you looked at the value, we would not have gotten a lot for him. Maybe a late first, a couple picks. I am so glad that that's not how this transpired, because if we were watching him do this somewhere else on a team that fit him well, even like a Golden State, who could use somebody like that at times, he'd be doing this, and I'm glad he's doing it for us.
And he just turned 28.
Yeah, he's
on the timeline, guys. I mean, that's the piece that is so exciting for me, because
he's got easy 5 years good left.
Yeah,
because especially with his game, he doesn't use his physicality a ton in terms of needing it. He's a shooter. He moves well, and I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. So yeah,
no doubt. Kudos to Myles. Congrats on the record, and hopefully this fan base will start to appreciate you for what you are, playing a phenomenal year this year, a number 1 assist duo with Haliburton in the league.
I'm glad you said that about the fan base, too, because he said that in his post-game interview after beating the record. He goes, I know Indy fans, I know some real ones out there who supported me the whole time, and I appreciate you. it was just one of those moments like, yes, Myles, we are here, and we do love you.
For sure.
Now, with that said, there are frustrations. But
finish around the rim. But whatever.
Hey, he had a couple nice, real nice finishes.
He did. There's just a few that roll off. And you can even see Tyrese looks at him sometimes. He's like, come on, dude, give me the assist. Yeah. But anyway, so we got to move on to Pacers, Lakers. I'll be honest, I had to watch this one back. I didn't watch this one live. I had other things going on. So I've got all my notes from watching it back on Bally's. Thankfully, they have the replays up there. It was obvious and blatantly obvious that this was going to be a game impacted by the officiating. Yeah. Because there was a point, I want to say it was in the second quarter, maybe it was late first. I don't have that time slotted in my notes, where AD and LeBron literally had like a private huddle with the referees, while Turner, coincidentally, is standing at the line waiting to take a free throw. Yeah. And it was something ridiculous. Carlisle quoted the officiating spread, at the end of the game. I still thought there was a lot to like, though, out of this game. So I know you watched it live. What were your takeaways after kind of watching it back on, what was it, Saturday, Sunday? I can't remember. Sunday night.
It was another one of those, and this was the theme of this weekend, really. Very balanced. Everybody who played really got going. This was the first game we got to see Doug kind of get a little bit of wheels, although there's still some areas where, and I know we're going to talk on Jarris Walker here, and who should probably get those minutes.
Doug is terrible on defense.
Oh, he blew a couple late in that game.
Turnover late, and he you know what, he owned up to it in the press conference. He said I made a dumb mistake. He could have had the two, throws it away, whatever. But it was. He got the shot going. That's why we have him. We're going to have to live with some of the defense. So anyways, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
They got going. I will say this, and Tyrese, I think we definitely had the bounce back weekend we wanted to see from him. Now, this Lakers game was not that game per se. I don't think he played terrible. You texted me after watching it and was like, he didn't look to get a lot going. I think the Lakers are clearly, we saw this with the in-season tournament, a tough matchup. And I tried to think why, because he should still be able to get his looks. I think there's something about their length and size, actually, between Rui, LeBron, and AD, that even when he drives in the paint, he's getting hit. There are huge bodies. It's hard to find the passing angles. And so it really makes for a tough matchup, and I'm glad they're in the West.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I actually had in my notes, I thought his defensive matchups were kind of getting him out of rhythm on offense. He had to guard Hachimura a couple times and had a really rough go there. I mean, that's a tough match. But they were putting so much size on the floor that there was nowhere to really hide Tyrese. And I hate saying that for your superstar player, but sometimes that's what you're trying to do. Oh yeah. And so, I thought the fouls slowed the game down. There were some untimely turnovers on our side for sure, but we just got killed in the half court. Yeah. We were, and I don't know, I understand it to a degree. We were running two at LeBron at the top of the key a lot and kind of saying, okay, we're going to force the ball out of his hands. But Dinwiddie had a great game. Reeves looked really good facilitating. And AD was just, I mean, I had it in my notes. He had 28 and 13 at the end of the third. And I didn't even, it was the first time I wrote anything down about AD. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, he was just getting everything at the rim.
Myles struggles. He did it again in the in-season tournament against AD, and I think you hit on it. Spencer Dinwiddie was pretty big in this game.
Yeah, had 26 points.
When Russell went down or had his injury, I don't think it's a long-term one, and he was in, it was one of those games where I would almost call this like his Lakers, coming out party to a certain degree. I look back at his game log, and he's had some good games, but this was his highest minute per game, and it felt like every time we made these runs, and LeBron's going to get his, AD's going to get his, Reeves is really good. I loved him in the World Cup this year. And it just felt like Dinwiddie was kind of that X-factor guy who every time they needed a big bucket, he was attacking or hitting a shot. And it was tough. And then, you get in those late game scenarios, and I even had a play, this wasn't late, where I knew the refs were going to start to come into it, is Siakam drove, got hit, knocked down to the floor. He's on the ground.
Yep.
They run down the other side. LeBron goes, drives, gets hit, knocked down the ground, called it immediately.
I had it right. Yeah. This is literally what I was about to say. Siakam got the worst whistle for a guy who had 36 points that night. He had so many and one possibilities, and just he was cooking in the lane. They had no answer. He had 17 of our 19 points over halfway into the third.
Wow.
So at 5:17, he accounted for 17 of our 19 in the third. I think he had, I don't know what he finished with. I know it was in that quarter. I think he finished with like 19 or 21 of his 36 were in the third. He was our only offense, and that was really where we lost the game. There were some, like I said, untimely turnovers at the end of the third. TJ had a few of them that were uncharacteristic. I thought he had a little bit of a rougher game, even though he still statistically was good. And then at the end of the game, frankly, it was like Tyrese just decided to flip the switch.
Yeah.
He hadn't really looked to get his shot all night, and then it was just too little too late. Too little too late, but it was good. I think, frankly, he carried over some of that momentum, hitting those late threes, and we had a chance to cut it down. I mean, we were down 3 with under a minute and a half to go.
Yeah.
And just, it's the way it goes. It's a bad matchup for us. I know we don't have the exact number, but we weren't the only ones that noticed the fouls on Saturday night, meaning Pacers fans. The rest of the league has paid attention. Over the last 2 seasons, it's something like a, plus 1,000 for the Lakers.
Yeah, they have a free throw differential. So they've shot 1,000 more free throws than their opposing team through the last 2 seasons. And it's just kind of absurd. We are not LeBron fans if you've been listening at all.
Right.
In fact, I would love to do one where I just eat him alive because he drives me nuts. And he had this earlier, it was either December or January, a game where the calls didn't go his way or whatever, and he's literally in the locker room like bitching about the refs, how they take him out of the game, and he's not even just saying this game, it's like the league. And I don't know how you can then go back and look at these numbers and be like, oh yeah, no, we're getting the tough call here.
Yeah. Oh, it's not only that it's a plus 1,000 differential leading the NBA, it's almost double the next team.
I actually think it is.
It's. I know this season it's like this, because I saw this year's numbers. It's like 480 or something, and the next highest is like 250. So it's maybe not quite double this year, but over the 2-year span, it is. It's every time down the floor. I mean, Nesmith had a great block on him.
I'm glad you said that.
And LeBron turns around and literally like grabs his wrist.
It was like 2 possessions in a row where Nesmith is in him playing great defense, and they showed replays, and it was all clean, and he is just... And then it was right before the Siakam play happened, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, here we go. They're going to start getting it back into it.
And I hate being that way. I don't want to blame the refs, but... Listen, when Carlisle's willing to say it, and it's 37-15 or whatever it was, I mean, there's when there's smoke, there's probably fire somewhere. And
the truth is, we haven't talked about, I think, officiating at all this year in our podcast, so it's not something routine. It's it's the hardest when it's LeBron too. We've had so many battles with him, and I was talking to you before this. It reminded me of our 2018 series against the Cavs, first round. In Game 7, where LeBron tweaked his ankle or something at the beginning of the fourth, goes out, and they called 3 quick fouls immediately. And I was in Dayton at the time with a bunch of Cleveland fans, unfortunately. Yeah. And I looked at him and said, we don't have a chance. The refs are going to take it out. They shot 17 free throws in that fourth quarter of Game 7. There was no rhythm. It was all, and they were not shooting fouls. They were driving, reach fouls, all these. And it's just a trend that, truthfully, the stars get the calls in this league. We see that. We've seen a little pushback on that, which is nice to see, which we hinted at the beginning of this. It sucks. I don't love talking about the refs. Nobody does, but it's clear the Lakers and LeBron get an extra call.
They got a favorable whistle. Yeah. There's just no two ways about it. And you just said something right there that was an exact characterization of the Lakers game. It wasn't just shooting fouls. It was all these... reaching off ball, 50-50 calls.
And it changes the momentum. And it's literally what we talked about in the Warriors game, where if we get these now, we're in transition, we're changing the momentum of the game, and it just slows everything down. And it's hard not to get frustrated. You can tell the players. I mean, Nesmith was literally just like, what am I supposed to do?
Well, he had 5 fouls at some point in the third. Yeah. And unfortunately had a really brutal collision with Cam Reddish, I think it was, during that game, and he's out for the Clippers game. I think it's just a knee bruise.
I think they would have said something if it was anything more serious. Hopefully we get him back soon.
He was on the bench, last night and standing up and all that. So tough loss at LA. We knew the matchup was going to be tough. I actually thought that was our toughest game of the trip. So we split it in LA, and that's where we got to kind of go now is the Clippers game. And this was much like Golden State. I felt like one of our best outings of the season.
It was one of the most fun, actually. I was watching it and I was just like, oh, this is so great. And I was kind of bummed because I was with a couple of my roommates and I was like, the Pacer game starts at 10:30 tonight, guys. Not even 10. I was like, it's another 30. But it immediately started, and I was really glad we can get right into the game. This was the first game since Tyrese's slump where he hit his first 3 of the game.
Okay.
And there's something I think, I'm not going to make a ton of golf references. I did one. But it's so nice to go out on the first hole and just smack a drive right down the middle. There's a mentality where it's like, oh, this round's going to be great. And you can see that because he hit 5 in a row after that.
It's the perfect analogy because you pull one left or you block one right off the tee. Now it's in your mind. The seed of doubt is there. And for a shooter, I mean, listen, I played basketball, but I'm not Tyrese Haliburton, obviously. It's like, oh, here we go again, and I think he hit his first 5.
Yeah, he did.
He was 5 for 5 to start the game. Didn't even take a 2-point shot in the first half. And again, what we have seen over the last couple of games, and I tweeted this out, I think this was after, I forget if it was after the Warriors game, it must have been, but at one point, we talked about lineup combinations last episode with Haliburton and how Siakam was really towards the bottom. Their differential, Ryan, in just these games has jumped from like a -3 to a positive 0.5 or something like that. So, excuse me, you're starting to see the impact where I think we've identified that Siakam is the guy if we have to get a bucket in the half court, but we're not necessarily intentionally trying to slow it down all the time for him, let him get it in rhythm. And I thought that was great to see yesterday. I mean, he had another game with, I believe it was 36. Was it 36 again?
Oh, no.
I think it was 31.
Yeah,
31 and another. I mean, his last 6 games are like 27, 11, and 3 or something. So he's just coming into a groove and kind of fitting. Obviously, Jarris Walker is the story, really, I think, coming out of last night. Ben Shepherd gets the start.
Yep.
PG cooked him early, and they were looking to attack him. There's no doubt. And I actually thought Ben did okay on him, but Jarris comes in, and it was literally a defensive possession. The first time he comes in the game, he's on Kawhi, and he just stayed on his feet. And Kawhi misses the shot, and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. That was kind of new. Like he looked to hold his own. So
it was awesome to see Jarris. I've used this word a lot with Jarris. He comes in and specifically in this run where Doug's been hurt a little bit. We talked about his rotation minutes for a minute where like if you play well in these first 5 minutes in the first half, we'll give you another 5 or 6 in the second half. And just playing that way to me, he feels antsy sometimes when he first gets out there. I don't know what other word to describe it that way. He's just kind of bouncy. Yep. And this was his highest minutes per game. He had 29 minutes this game. He's only had 5 games where he's played 20 minutes this whole year, which is a whole nother conversation. But it was
really only
5 games with 20 minutes. Yeah.
Wow.
And you think with even 1 or 2 of those might have been blowouts. I didn't even look. So this was one of his first really, you're going to be in it. You're going to play with the starters, which was awesome. You hit on a defensive play. It was late the first or early second quarter when it was him and Nembhard. It was Harden and Kawhi. And he starts on Kawhi. He's all over him. Kawhi can't go anywhere. He's on the right side. Then they switch it. So Harden comes over, sets a screen, immediate switch with Nembhard. He's on Harden in his grill. They have to force it back to Kawhi.
Yeah.
And Kawhi's got to shoot immediately, misses the shot. And I was just like, this is something we could get used to. He was great at staying in front of people. He was contesting. He had 1 block. I thought he was going to get it. That would have been really nasty, I think, on Kawhi after he drove. But his defense was good. His playmaking was really probably the key. The standout play, obviously, being the one where he's on the left side. He fakes a three. There's like a second left on the shot clock and finds Jalen Smith under the rim.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And we've used this word, the connector piece. That was the whole thing he was supposed to be. And you really didn't see that at Houston. Talking about college basketball, they don't know how to use their own players. But
right.
And it was this got me very excited, and now I'm even more pissed that he hasn't been playing.
I definitely am pissed that he hasn't been playing. Now, the coaching staff has said all along he's needed to earn his spot, and I think he was. I don't know if he was perfect from the field last night. He started.
He missed 1 3.
Did he miss
2
one?
of 3 from deep?
But what is most encouraging to me is when we drafted Jarris Walker. Really, it was about is he going to be the future at the 4? Mm-hmm. Defense, physicality, whatever. This whole playmaking, the word you used, that he has showcased, he plays offense and sees the floor like a veteran.
Yep.
The kid's 19 years old. I mean, I was texting some buddies today, and they're like, you got to remember he's 19. And now he's showing an ability to play. Obviously, Pascal's going to be the future at the 4.
Yep.
And we've talked about Obi kind of playing his way onto this team next year. We both think that that's a re-sign based on fit and just his ability to do a lot of different things for you. We love Nesmith at the 3, obviously, but Jarris is proving to me that he can play a lot of different. He's not a 4. He can play a lot of different roles. And yeah, I was most impressed by the defense and his passing last night. Just seeing guys
in transition. He had a few where he'd grab the board and he wouldn't even look for somebody else. He's going down the floor, and that's the stuff where when he's getting those short minute stints where he kind of looks and I think after playing, when you get 29 minutes, and he was the highest plus minus on the team, Rick Carlisle said after the post game, he was confident. He knew where he wanted to go, and he made a lot of nice passes. His defense was there, and I'm with you with the versatility he brings, where he can kind of be that. You don't want to set unreal expectations, but Draymond Green style offensive guy, where he's kind of point. He's not. Again, I love that, I've said it now, the connector term where he's not running it, but if you get him a look, he's got the next read ready to go. And he can guard. I mean, we saw him on Kawhi, PG. I think he's got the speed. On defense, the one thing I will say is his first step isn't slow on lateral, but it's very long, if you notice. He'll almost jump back away from people. So he got in trouble with Paul George a couple times where he's too far off of him.
I did actually notice that. Closing out, but not really contesting.
But that just comes with time. It's not like an Obi thing where I'm worried about, he actually doesn't have the lateral movement to stay with these guys. So, yeah, it's one of those now where you watch that, and if I compare, let's say, last game was Doug's best game as a Pacer since we've traded for him, and this was probably my favorite Jarris Walker game of the season. Yeah. And I just don't know how you don't. And Doug had more points, but that's not what we need from Jarris. We're not looking. Any threes we get from him is just a cherry on top to me at this point. Now, we'll need that shooting later down the road for his development, but the fit was awesome.
Rick's going to use both. I think we want, as fans, and Jarris being the shiny new toy rookie, everybody wants him to get the run. He's not going to look this good every game. This can't be the bar, but it is great to see that it exists. It exists. That's exactly right. So just one little anecdote from last night, because I thought this lineup won us the game. It was to start the fourth quarter. It was TJ, Shepard, Walker, Siakam, and Jalen Smith.
Oh, yeah.
They went on a 25-14 run. So they outscored the Clippers by 11 to start the fourth. And we were going into the fourth with a little bit of a lead. I think we had an 8, maybe 9. I think it was 8-point lead going in. And they pushed that all the way up to 19. I actually went after the game and I was like, well, this is a strange lineup that can't have played a lot of minutes. So per 100 possessions, they've played 26 minutes together. That lineup, they're plus 72.
There you go.
So that lineup, I mean, not that that's relevant in the big picture, but it was pretty impressive. And I got to say this too. Second quarter, we got off to another slow start. We let them score 34 in the first. We held them under 30 for the final 3 quarters. But by the 9-minute mark in the second, I don't remember what time TJ checked in the game. He had 10 points at the 9-minute mark in the second. So TJ McConnell is just not getting enough credit. Yeah. Listen, I love talking about Siakam and Walker and Shepard, and McConnell has been phenomenal. And for a guy that a lot of people at the trade deadline were saying, well, you're not going to play him. We've got Nembhard. Why don't we get rid of this guy? It's like, this is a 6 man of the year candidate. He's not, but he is, if you get what I'm trying to say. I just don't know if you can say enough about him. I mean, they couldn't guard him last night. PJ Tucker was literally looking like down at the floor, like, how is this guy doing this? And I don't know why teams are still surprised, I guess.
His energy, and we have a couple family members who love to watch the games, maybe not as intently as we do, and they all say they're just like, when TJ comes in, we're scoring all the time. And it just feels like he comes in with that energy. We don't even really have to change our style of play because he wants to push it. He's trying to get in the lane and find now. 3J doesn't shoot, although I looked today, he's a 36% career shooter with us.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Wow. He hit one last night, didn't he? Yeah, he hit one of two, I think, last night. But before we jumped on this episode, I went and pulled up, as I've done a number of times, DraftKings 6 man of the year odds. He's not even listed. No. And if you pull some of these guys by their per 36-minute stats to get a level playing field, TJ per 36 minutes is like a 25-10 guy. And I just don't know why he's not getting a little bit more love, because it's not just that. He's averaging like a steal and a half a game in like 13 minutes a game.
He's great for two things that I think really underrated in a game. One, he's great as now like a bailout guy in our offense. When we start to stall, he can kind of just get to that spot where he gets
just
the 2
circles
feet in
around
the paint and hits his fade. And then also he's huge for momentum plays. This is where Lance Stevenson was always my favorite because he would always have these. But you hinted at with these, the TJ steals on the other half, and he's just making game-changing plays. And then he gets the crowd going, and it was awesome. I was actually listening to the Clippers broadcast last night. And the Clippers guy, and I'm not even shitting on him because it was really funny and they were giving him a lot of love, but his line was, he might not be the fastest. He might not be the strongest. He might not have a double-digit vertical leap. And I had to stop there. I was like, I don't know what you're saying. 10 inches, if you're sitting at home, even if you consider yourself very unathletic, you probably can jump 10 inches.
No doubt about it.
So I was laughing at that, but you go. But
well, no, I think it. Frankly, he has a really high straight up and down vertical leap. He's not a lateral leaper, but he gets his shot off against guys that have 6 and 7 inches on him with routine. I mean, it's like he's not even phased, and it's because he's so quick with it. He's up in the air before they can react, and he shoots it up high. That's when we've talked about with his three, why I think sometimes he struggles is he shoots when he shoots those mid-range, kind of fadeaway twos. I don't really know how you would put him. The ball is up above his head when he's releasing it, which is where you want it to be, and he's so efficient at it. He was always, when we were through, kind of the Nate McMillan and then into Bjorgen years, and we've always talked about who's your favorite. TJ was always my favorite coming in. He's so much fun to watch. You can't not like him because he lays it all on the line every single night. He's a ball of energy, and frankly, I didn't even think about this until now. Matherin's been out now for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, something like that. TJ is coming in and looking to score.
He's definitely picked up his offense. I think he's averaging like 14 and something in March. I mean,
it's been really impressive. So I had to put that in there because I think he's really spelled us and come in at critical times and delivered what we've needed. Last night was fun. You hit it on the head. It was a fun win, and now we've done this so often this year. It drives me nuts. We have these awesome, fun wins where it's like we come on this podcast, it looks like it's clicking. Haliburton, Siakam are jiving. Walker, whoever. I mean, Myles had 24 last night and hit some big threes. Now we have the Bulls on the road. We're 3-1 on this road trip. If we go 4-1, that's an A+ trip in my book. I literally A+, because you can't. 5-0 was not going to happen. No. But we've got this trap game against a team we should beat that's kind of had our number. I don't know what to think. I know they flew red-eye last night and got into Chicago early this morning. They've got the day off, and then we play tomorrow night. So I hope we can finish this thing 4-1. Frankly, we need it. We're still jockeying for position. I think right now, not saying that we couldn't get above the 6th, but I think we just have to play to get that 6th seed. That's where we're at.
It's clear to me, and we've talked about, Boston is, tier 1. I think Milwaukee, since getting Doc, has started figuring out a little bit. They were with Griffin running a lot of weird actions, especially on the defensive end.
Yep.
If you want to talk yourself in, let's say you get into that 6th seed. It's likely we're playing Cleveland, New York, or Orlando. Let's go. On all those, it's...
There's pros and cons to all of them, right? Orlando had our number earlier in the year. We had that great game in Orlando. Cleveland just beat us. That was...
It doesn't...
They weren't at full strength. That was whatever. New York, that's fun.
That's the one, yeah.
That's probably the most fun matchup for me, but if they're at full strength, that's a scary team. Now... OG Anunoby's had the elbow lingering. I don't know where Robinson and Randall are at. We've talked about it a number of times. Thibodeau runs these guys hard, but that would be number one offense in the league, which we are still the number one offense in the league against a team that's completely selling out for defense. The Brunson, Haliburton kind of up and coming point guards. That could be fun. I think. If I had to put money on it right now, I don't know what the odds are. I think we probably land in the 6th seed. We've guaranteed ourselves a spot in the play-in. That happened over the course of the last couple of days. So,
let's hope we can ride this up a little bit longer.
Yeah.
The one thing that's really encouraging that I was thinking about today is we've seen this with Pacers. That one year we played the Hawks in the first round and they took us to 7. We were playing some of our worst basketball going into the playoffs. I feel like, especially, I don't want to get too trapped up in this weekend because I had a lot of fun watching us, even in our loss against the Lakers. It feels like that synergy between Siakam's, not only with Tyrese, but with the whole team is figuring out. Everybody's kind of gelling. We've kind of figured out who's going to take the Mathurin scoring punch a little bit with McConnell, and Nembhard had a really good scoring weekend this weekend.
Yeah.
And so I hope we can keep that stretch going. And that 6th seed, I really you don't want to see Miami in the play-in or Philly, because if they have Embiid, all of a sudden you lose that, and we're one game away from not having anything.
100%. Big game on April 7th, Miami. Last game against them of the year. That's going to be a critical one for us. But you hit the nail on the head. Siakam has talked about this. This is what I love to hear from him, because there is no better example of peaking at the right time than what the Raptors did when they won their title. I think it was 2019. Siakam understands that. He's referenced it in post-game press conferences. It seems like we could be doing that. I had a little stat. So we're 10-7 since the break. Okay, we'll kind of close with this. We're 10-7 since the break. I think it's like it's a top 10 record somewhere in there coming out of All-Star. Our last 4 losses, though, are by a combined 15 points. It's 5 points against the Lakers, 5 points against the Cavs, both games you could have won. It's an overtime 3-point loss that could have been a win against the Bulls, and it's a 2-point loss to a crazy final Edwards. 2 minutes from Edwards. It feels worse for you win one of those games, and 11-6 sounds a lot better than 10-7. But frankly, we've been able to survive our best player having the worst stretch of his season. And it appears that we are coming out on an upswing right now. And if we can take care of business against Chicago tomorrow night, we'll see where this thing goes. Every game counts. We know that. But it's been a lot of fun, like you said, this weekend. So we'll see where it goes, guys. We'll come at you here in another week or so. I'm going out of the country for the next week. So we'll probably return and play catch-up early February, early April. Pacers fans, we appreciate you guys listening. Check us out on social media. You're listening to the Pacers Post Up.